Want to thank the organizers for including this session in the program. Now, this is a business forum, and so the connection to food security and nutrition, I believe we can see that clearly in the production and consumption opportunities in agriculture and food security. But I think also in terms of food security and nutrition, the point is that we need to ensure that Nigeria, like other developing countries, has the right human capacity and hence a well-nourished human capacity in order to engage productively in business. And for that reason, I'd like to start off with a picture and a question. And so if we have the slides come up, I'll put that question to you. A picture here that I've labeled midday nap in Maiduguri, Borno, picture taken earlier this month. Now, here's the picture, and the question to us is, why are these boys sleeping in the middle of the day instead of being engaged in a productive activity such as education, being in school, building up skills, learning a trade, right? Various types of productive capacities that could be developed. The previous speaker mentioned he was grateful to the organizer for putting him after the lunch session because he said concentration goes up after you have something in your stomach. And so he's already answered the question that I'm posing to you, that in a lot of situations we have these problems where human capacity is not being built because of a lack of nutrition. So research has shown that when you have nutrition problems, children are unable to concentrate in school. This is an extreme version of it where they are actually fully asleep and not in school at all, not engaged in any productive activity around this time of the day, right, middle of the day. And so if we can go to the next slide, the title, as you heard, of this session is Climate Smart Agriculture as a Means of Tackling Food and Nutrition Security in Nigeria. Next slide, please. Okay, I can't advance the slides here, pardon me. So the first point to make here is in terms of the part of the title that says Climate Smart Agriculture. Some recent analysis from our institute, IFPRI, the International Food Policy Research Institute, which you see on the screen here, indicates that agricultural productivity goes down by as much as 5% when you have harmful days in terms of climate. And also importantly, that agricultural practices change when you have these harmful days. So obviously, a bad climate is bad for agriculture and food production. A second point to make here about the title, sorry, please go to the next slide. I don't seem to be able to advance it from here, is on the importance of nutrition, which I've alluded to already. So here you see some statistics here. More than a third of children in Nigeria have stunted growth, according to combined statistics from UNICEF, World Bank, and others. That's a staggering statistic that has influence on what we'll see in the future as far as their capacity and ability to engage in business. The other statistics you see here, about 20% of Nigerians are overweight, and you have problems like obesity. So malnutrition at both ends of the spectrum, either a lack of nutrition or overnutrition. And all of these have impacts for non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and so on, that again affect the productivity of the population. And the last point is that these multiple forms of malnutrition are found in both urban and rural areas. Why do we have the situation? Next slide, please. The central point here for us is that nutrition is at the heart of this problem of malnutrition. So on the next slide, if I could have that slide up, you see here a few bar charts showing on the far right the reference diet, right, the types of categories and of foods that should be consumed for a healthy lifestyle. And then you see on the far left the total for Nigeria, and in the middle you have the second chart that shows what's being consumed by the lowest income, and then the third chart is showing what's being consumed by the highest income households in Nigeria. The main point of this chart here is to show you that if you look at the categories at the bottom, you see the category of starchy of cereals, and then followed by starchy roots. So you can see there in terms of the cereals that there's a high consumption across various groups in Nigeria, higher consumption of cereals compared with the reference diet, the reference healthy diet. And then as you go up in the other nutritious foods such as fruits, vegetables, animal source products, there is a lower consumption than what should be consumed by households for a healthy diet. The central point being, again, that diets are at the center of the nutrition problem, and so to solve food and nutrition security, we need to solve the problem of diets. So having said that, on the next slide, please, we have the objectives of this session. Over the next 30-40 minutes, would think about how to improve food and nutrition security, with obviously a focus on diets because of what I've just explained. And then we'll also think about how agricultural policies and programs can be made nutrition smart. And we hope to have an engaging session here so that, unlike those boys, you not have to take a nap during this session. So having said that, let me introduce our panelists. We have 3 panelists online, and so I'll ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Cyril, Inegbedion, and then followed by Alexander Goma and Titilola Abolade, and then we'll come back to the room for our panelist here to introduce himself. So let's go to the screens now. Cyril, if you can hear us, please go ahead with your introduction.
Hello, Kwam, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cyril Inegbedion. I'm a senior program manager with Palladium International, working on the PROCOM Make-Free project, overseeing the environment and climate smart initiative activities of the organization.
Thank you, Cyril. And if you can just adjust your your camera a little bit, we'll be able to see you more clearly. That's great. And then secondly, Alexander Goma, please come online and introduce yourself. Alexander.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex. I manage Grand Cereals Limited. Grand Cereals is a UAC group company focused on nutrition. We produce animal feeds and human feed, food for humans as well as pet food. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alex, our third panelist, Titilola Abolade, please come online and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kwaw, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Titilola Abolade, and I work as the Program Director for Nutrition International in Nigeria. I oversee Nutrition International's programs and operations in the country, providing strategic guidance on project development and implementation, partnership, cultivation and strengthening, advocacy, resource mobilization, monitoring, and evaluation. So I manage Nutrition International's programs and operations in the country and ensure that our support aligns with the priorities and plans of the government of Nigeria as well. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Titilola. We can see and hear you all clearly, thankfully. So now back to the room. I'll allow my fellow panelist here to introduce himself.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Osho. I work as a business development manager with Bayer Nigeria Limited. I work with a group of other colleagues at implementing Bayer worldwide vision in Nigeria, of course improving on food security. We have been doing that for the past 6 years in Nigeria, and it's all been good news.
Excellent. So we have our full panel here. And we'll start right off with a question to Titilola Abolade from Nutrition International. So Titilola, here's the question. Does food security necessarily imply or mean nutrition security? And if not, how can agricultural policies, projects, initiatives become more nutrition smart? Over to you.
Thank you very much for the question. I'll start by saying that food security and nutrition security are very closely linked together. Nutrition security is much more actually than food security, because availability and access to food alone does not necessarily translate to having adequate nutrition. And you have succinctly captured all of this in your opening statement about the problem of malnutrition in Nigeria and the problems with our diets and all of that. As we know, malnutrition is often due to more than one factor. Actually, we have immediate causes of malnutrition as inadequate food intake and diseases, and the underlying causes are food security, inadequate care, and access to health services. Other basic causes of malnutrition include poverty and other institutional weaknesses. But if we look at the underlying causes, food insecurity, we will say food security should be able to handle that, but we also have other aspects of it. For example, in our local context, and from the figures that you presented also earlier on, we could see that most of our staples in Nigeria are energy sufficient. They have high fiber dietary staples, but then they lack other essential nutrients like protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals. And so sometimes when we look at it in our local context and say, oh, we have food security, sometimes it's meaning that we have sufficient staples at home, and those staples are those energy-rich foods that do not supply other nutrients. And that is one of the things that are contributing to the huge problem of malnutrition in Nigeria. And you've also very greatly presented the statistics that we have in Nigeria of high rates of stunting and even high rates of micronutrient deficiency. 68% of children, 6 to 59 months, 58% of women, 15 to 49 years are anemic. And then we also have very dismal statistics for other micronutrient deficiencies in the country as well. We know that good nutrition is the foundation for human development, and we know this is important for us to survive and thrive, and also for our brain to develop and for us to have a good immune system and also grow properly. And like you said earlier on, for us to have healthy population that will be able to contribute very well to nation development and to our economy, we need them to be well nourished. So nutrition security has to be more than having enough of right foods. We can have diversified diets, but in addition, it also involves having adequate access to caregiving practices that support nutrition, hygienic practices as well as ensuring access to healthcare, what's the healthcare seeking behavior, availability of water and sanitation services. Food handling also is important. The education of the caregiver is also important to be able to carry out caregiving and adequate feeding appropriately, because if you have the healthiest of diets, it does not necessarily guarantee being able to fully utilize the nutrients in those diets in the cases of an illness or because that arise as a result of living in unsanitary conditions or handling foods improperly. So we can see here that because of the myriad of factors that cause malnutrition, we need to address all of these factors from different angles. So for us to improve health and nutritional status, we need to focus on both concepts of food and food security and also nutrition security. We need to particularly focus on ensuring that we have diversified foods that supply all the nutrients that is needed for growth, while also enhancing our caregiving and feeding practices as well as hygiene and also access to health care. Now, this brings me to the point of the fact that we need a multi-sectoral approach to actually identify and employ a wide range of strategies so that we can foster food and nutrition security. And the agricultural sector, the business sector, the healthcare, water and sanitation, basic infrastructure, gender, social protection, education, all of these different sectors are also very important. because there are very, very strong links between hunger, nutrition, health, and other issues that we have. And so it's important for us to focus a lot on nutrition security. Even as we try to ensure that we get rid of hunger, we should also be strengthening our activities around diversifying foods, like I said, to ensure that we have good nutrition. Kwaw, I want to find out if I can go on to the next question.
Thank you very much, Titilola, for capturing all of those good points. Because of our time, I'll come back to the room now. And so we had a good discussion over lunch with Andrew. I had a good discussion about the work that's being done to improve yield of crops. Andrew, please tell that to the audience here. What can be done, what is being done?
Okay, as it were today, we find out that a lot of what we eat, a lot of the crop that is produced in Nigeria comes from the small-scale farmers, which are about 95% up, as in some cases up to 97% of the farmers in Nigeria. So what we have in Nigeria is 97% of our people producing about 80% of what we eat. And the remaining 20% is left to just about 5% of the total population of farmers. This definitely ought not to be, because for the bulk of the people that are producing, they are producing at a very, very inefficient rate, because there's gross inefficiency in what they are doing. When you look at output per hectare, it is very, very little as compared to what is gotten outside of the country. What we have been doing and be looking at is how do we improve on what is coming out from these people, and that brings us to the inputs that come to them, which the most important of us is the seed. What seed are they planting? What other inputs are coming into what they are producing? Take a crop like maize, for instance. We've got maize outside of Nigeria coming up at about 10 tons per hectare. And for some of the improved sector, for some of the big farmers that are farming, they go as high as 5 to 10 tons per hectare. But for the main farmers that produce what we eat, that produce what we make use of in our industries, they are still there at about 2 to 3 tons per hectare. So that is definitely a major stumbling block to our production in Nigeria. When you talk of a crop like rice also, you've got most of the farmers producing at a very low capacity at about 1 ton, about 2 to 3 tons per hectare, as against up to like 7 tons that they can actually get to, about the capacity they should be able to get to. So what we are doing now is to come around, working with government, working with some other persons, to come around and see how can we go about this, how do we go about increasing yield, improving on yield, and improving on yield, which is the most important thing for us in Nigeria today. Then, talking about the climate-smart agriculture, we also have found out that most of our farmers, of course, more than 90% of what we eat depends on rain-fed agriculture. As we note, we are all aware of it. There are times when we tell ourselves tomato, pepper is cheaper this time, and at this other time it is very expensive. It's because we depend squarely on the rain to feed ourselves, which as of today, it is no longer what is obtainable in the world. We need to match up. We need to improve on what we do to improve efficiency.
Thank you, Andrew. So improving yields, also addressing the climate issue. Very important. Now, on the climate-smart agriculture, let's hear from what's being done in the development sector from Cyril at Palladium and how they have applied climate-smart agriculture in their projects. Cyril, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kwaw. Permit me to give a brief background of the PropCom IFPRI project, which is being funded by the UK aid, that's FCDO, through Palladium. It's a 9-year market system project that was started in 2012 and ended in 2017, and we have an extension phase from 2018 to 2021. It's a program that is focused on to improve rural markets for benefits of poor in northern Nigeria. And in this extension phase, there are two key components. One is to increase resilience of the rural poor to climate change by growing a portfolio of climate smart intervention, and also to expand the program in conflict-affected states in the northeast of Nigeria to work towards sustained stability and economic recovery. In the course of this, we did some study and we discovered that, yes, there are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues within the production cycle in the Northeast and some other northern states where we work. And we felt, okay, what system do we adopt? What method do we adopt? What approach in dealing with the effects, the negative effects of climate change in this environment, which is gradually affecting production and which translates to high cost of food and scarcity in some instances. So what we did was to adopt an agroforestry system, which globally has been known to provide. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes. We adopted sustainable agroforestry practices, which are identified by both national and multilateral organizations as a key approach to combating the effect of climate change and boost food production. In adopting agroforestry, we had to narrow down to an economic tree. Which of the economic tree? We looked down in the Northeast and we identified that there's a particular economic tree that is low volume but high value in crop, and that is gum arabic, which is known as Acacia senegal. We said, okay, this is a market system approach. If we had to push for these farmers to adopt climate smart agriculture, there must be an incentive for them to do it, because when you tell the local farmers, come, the issue of climate, some of them believe it's an act of God. But we had to sensitize them to let them know that no, this is not an act of God, but this can be changed. There are ways to mitigate against it. So in doing this, we had to get a private sector player who deals on products of these economic trees to push, because as a market system project, we want sustainability. After the project is off, we want it to be sustained. So we got a private sector player who exports gum arabic to be our partner, and we provided some funding supports on a cost share base to ensure that this farmer identified the constraint within that value chain of gum arabic that we need to address. In addressing that, one, we had to get the farmers on board who have these gum arabics, train them, provided them with the skills, the requisite skills, information, and knowledge on how to go about sustainable agroforestry practices and intercropping with legumes. What do we intend to achieve in doing that? We intend to achieve, one, the issue of soil degradation, which is affecting production. Secondly, the issue of soil nutrient depletion, which we believe that when you use legume, when you intercrop with legume in agroforestry setting, it is going to provide you the requisite nutrient replenishment in the soil. That's one. Then secondly, intercropping with legume in agroforestry system provides cover on the soil, because most of the legumes in the northeast we plant are crawling crops. So this protects the soil from the erosive power of the rain, and also creates increase the soil biology, and thereby creating biodiversity. So that's what we did. At the end of the day, presently we have about 12,000 hectares undergoing agroforestry practices in the northeast, and for every one tree of gum arabic that is planted, you potentially sequester 20 kilograms of carbon per annum. So at the end of the lifespan of that tree, one particular gum arabic tree has the potential to sequester, to absorb 1,000 kilograms of carbon. And this particular gum arabic tree, we're encouraging the farmers to plant an intercrop within. It's a leguminous crop, and it's a crop that has very high, one of the highest potential of absorbing carbon in the environment. And secondly, it is a drought-resistant tree, looking at the environment in the northeast, which is a bit desert to an extent as a result of the impact of climate change and also the activities of man. So we'll be able to push that. Presently, we have about 12,000 hectares undergoing agroforestry, sustainable agroforestry practices. And for every 1 hectare of agroforestry land, we're able to replenish the soil nutrient, the nitrogen nutrient, with about 100 kilograms of nitrogen. So that's what we're doing currently. And we're also looking at sustainability. What we did was to bring in the association, the Goma Arabic Association, into the fold. we train them, we build their capacity to ensure that, yes, after the program has exited the scene, they will continue to push and ensure that their members continue to adopt these sustainable practices. So that's one way we're using to fight the effects of climate change within the environment. And in the course of this, we identify some other opportunities whereby we have to layer cook stove and briquettes into those agroforestry locations so that it will prevent the farmers from going to cut down trees. Because the more you cut down trees, you are exposing your land to the vagaries of weather and they're reducing the productivity of those soil. So in doing that, we had to introduce efficient cooks, environment-friendly efficient cook stove, and also briquettes that are being produced from agricultural waste to ensure that they don't go about cutting down their trees. So that's the approach we are adopting to ensure that, yes, we are fighting the climate, the issues of climate change within the region where we work.
Thank you very much, Cyril, for these exciting examples of the work on climate-smart agriculture. And now, lastly, on our panel, coming back to the issue of nutrition, we would like to hear from you, Alexander at Grand Cereals, how food fortification can be an option for improving the quality of nutrition and diet. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kwaw. I think your slide that you shared, which showed the requirements, dietary requirements for people, and then what you have for Nigerians, and Nigerians at the low end, and also Nigerians at the high end. So it's clear that there are certain nutrients that have to be added to food, especially processed food, if we're going to beat the issue of malnutrition. And vitamin A is one of those critical ingredients that is being applied in this manner. Why vitamin A? Because vitamin A is responsible for cell growth, helps the immune system, and also helps good vision. So it's something that if you add for children and also for young adults, it actually helps their development. Grand Cereals is part of a group that is operating what you call the Micronutrient Fortification Index. This is an initiative that was set up with the Gates Foundation, TechnoServe, with the Flour Millers Association of Nigeria, in conjunction with Lagos Business School and the Ministry of Health and also Industries, just to ensure that, okay, how can we raise the standards for food fortification? There are certain types of foodstuffs that are consumed daily as part of regular plate for people, which are vehicles for food fortification. So flour, oil, sugar, and salt. So for us at Grand Cereals, we have been doing fortification of our flour products. We have two main flour products, Grand Richfield and Grand Vita, which are part of that, as well as our Grand Soya Oil, which is part of that particular index. Currently, this index is published, and we are actually in the top 5 of the vitamin A micro-fortification index of producers in Nigeria. The whole idea is to ensure that, okay, you can get all the manufacturers to key into this, and therefore it becomes a veritable tool for ensuring that we can reduce the levels of malnutrition using this particular tool. So with the organized sector like the Flour Millers Association of Nigeria, we've been able to come in as a group to partner with the Gates Foundation, Dangote Foundation, and TechnoServe to make this happen. There's been a lot of progress in other areas with salt for iodine, for example. I think that's largely done. And I also think for sugar, because that's largely done. So the more we can fortify different processed foodstuff, the better we can give access to good nutrition, especially for the 70% of the population that live under $2 per day and can largely just afford the largely starch-based staples that you find around.
Thank you very much, Alexander. I'm sure there might be some questions from the audience. Unfortunately, given our time, we will not be able to entertain those. But I hope that in this somewhat short session, you have been able to hear, even from what Alexander just shared about the work on food fortification or the work on climate-smart agriculture that Cyril mentioned, improving yields and quality of crops that Andrew here has described, and earlier the framework that Titilola gave about the importance of nutrition and the importance of diets, but other aspects such as hygiene for improving nutrition outcomes. I hope through all of this you have caught a glimpse of how some of the problems that I presented at the beginning are actually opportunities, right, waiting for change and action in this area of addressing food and nutrition security.